Hey guys, welcome back. BDCKR here. It's been a little bit, but we're back with season 10, episode 5 of our, by now, not even close to weekly Q&A videos. I have been super busy. This has been like a really unusually busy time in my life. From somebody who has had weird and inconsistent and what seemed like very busy times in my life, this has just been sort of extra that. But we're back. I'm glad to be recording a video. Unfortunately, there's no updates that I can sort of share here. Right. I'm keeping the thing I'm busy with in the channel 100% separate. Whereas I'm keeping, most of my life's personal details, maybe 90% separate. People can know sort of the broad region, we live and other stuff. But this is fully in a box off to the side. So unfortunately, I can't tell you why I've been so busy, but you'll just have to take it on good faith that, we're doing this because we actually like doing it.
Well, I believe you. I don't know if anybody else will. So then I'll get you caught up on what I've been doing with the channel, actually, when you've been busy. So the Q&As don't really work exactly as well with just me talking. So what I've been doing is multiplayer tips, where there's certain things that occur to me, like certain sort of insights that maybe aren't the conventional stuff. And so what I've been doing is multiplayer tips. And last week or maybe the week before, when somebody asks a close enough question, I can use that as an excuse to call it the Q&A. Last week, there we go. Well, see, and the funny thing is, I had a teaser for what I was going to do last week, but nobody took me up on it, because if they'd asked the question, they could have had their name in the description and a bit of a shout out for asking the question, because if they'd known what was happening, that would have been fun. Oh,
no,
what I was going to do.
You say they could have had their name in the description, having your name written down in the description of a 100 view YouTube video.
That's right.
Is like a prize.
It's like a shout out. Well, back in the old days, Marvel Comics, they would have a thing where if you wrote a letter to the editor and you pointed out a mistake, you would get a no prize. And the joke of the no prize is it's actually not a prize. You get nothing. But they call it a no prize, and that was the thing.
That's funny.
Last week I screwed up too, because I put some partial footage of what was ending up in the video. No audio, no nothing. And I ended up putting that footage up first instead of the final video.
So it was a second teaser.
It was a second teaser. But this week, what I was going to do, if you weren't going to be available, was I had a really interesting thing that... So, the Arkham Knight team. And Arkham Knight, the Arkham Knight, has a mechanic in his basics where he has a bunch of extra combo enders if you do the tap combo. But he also has a bunch of extra hits on his swipe combo, too. So it's almost not worth doing the tap combo, because he has the same number of hits, they do more damage, and they generate the same amount of power. So the only advantage would be if you have gear that works on combo ender and not just a regular combo. But that's not the cool part. So what I was doing was I tried him as a special specialist, because that's what I've been doing with the challenges, and I thought I'd keep that up even while you're gone. So what I realized is that Arkham Knight Catwoman, if you use her as your secondary special specialist without Tantu Totem Master's Death Card, but just some power generating gear, that if you do it right, and when she comes in and the opponent is backed up, you can chain her tap combo into her special one, which is the opposite of what everybody does. Everybody usually wants to know what special can you chain into their basics so you can get the special unblocked. You can get her basic tap combo unblocked after a special one, because you can swipe them from when they're still on the ground before they've even gotten up. So when they've got 2 bars of power or whatever, and they're ready to do a super or a special, but they don't, because you start swiping and hitting them. And if you give her 2 power generating gears, 2 strong ones, League of Assassins Knives and what's the one that does the second special one? I can't even remember. The Heart of Darkness, that's it. Then that tap combo can give you almost a full bar of power. So if you have a little bit left over from before, you can chain her special one into a basic combo into another special one, and you can basically bleed them out before they even realize it, without giving your Master's Death card or Tantu Totem.
So it's not quite an infinite combo, but it's like pretty close.
It's good enough. If she's going to be your secondary character, it's really neat. And this is the point of it, and I was going to say this at the end of the video. I might still make it anyways, but is that sometimes when you are forced to play with a character that doesn't intuitively seem obviously good in the way that you need to play them, you never know until you've played them a bunch, the nuances involved and what you can actually get out of them.
Yeah.
Because Arkham Knight's better as a special specialist than I thought he would be.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was that content.
Oh, watched a good movie recently too.
Okay.
So without being too spoilery, I don't usually like watching horror. I saw this recommendation from a Facebook friend saying that this movie called The Long Walk. It's a movie by Maddie Doe, who is I guess Laos. How do you pronounce that?
Laos, Laos, yeah, like the country.
So yeah, they're Laotian, born in Laos, but raised in the U.S. And they've done 3 movies now, and this last one is like a weird mashup. It's a ghost story, it's a serial killer story, it is science fiction, it's time travel, it's like a whole bunch of stuff. But one of the cool things that it does, even so, when people do mashups, it's really effective when it's clear that they have an appreciation of them and an understanding of them. Mm-hmm. This one, for the parts that I don't know horror that well, but for the science fiction time travel stuff, it's like it really knows what it's talking about. It's subtle. It's really got a nice slow pace, and stuff happens, and it's quiet. But not only does the filmmaker have a grasp of it, it assumes the audience does, because there's these little quiet moments, and they don't, unless you really know what you're sort of seeing and what you're paying attention to, certain things are significant, and you can sort of slide right by it if you don't know the kind of movie that you're watching. And one thing that's really neat is that there's things that are weird. It doesn't sort of really show you, it doesn't spend a lot of time explaining stuff, but there's certain moments where emphatically you realize, okay, this narrator is actually reliable. It's not one of those movies where you don't know really what's happening. Is it a dream? Are they psychotic? Are they having hallucinations?
Yeah.
And it goes directly to the point where it tells you, yeah, this is the kind of movie that it is. This is really happening. And some other movies need that sort of unreliable narrator, is this really happening or not, to give it depth. This does not. It's got so many other things going on that is it real, is it not real, would be a total distraction, and it doesn't fall into that trap.
That's very really cool. Good. I think especially because a lot of those times there's like unreliable narrator where you're relying on sort of like mental health or hallucination related stuff,
right,
tends to be handled as it's more of like a plot thing than it is meant to be like an actual like depiction of or exploration of anything related to mental health. It's like an easy out where it's like, if you don't have those experiences personally, you can kind of just say like, oh, it's a hallucination, and then make up anything. Right.
There's too much freedom. It lets you do whatever, and then it loses its impact when you rewatch it.
When there shouldn't be, because it's not coming from like a informed perspective of what those things actually are. It's like it's an easy way of essentially saying like, this is our excuse to do anything we want story-wise, because this person doesn't know what's actually like. We just get to make up things that are happening and then say that it was all in the person's mind afterwards.
Right.
So that's very cool. So what was it called?
The Long Walk.
The Long Walk. Okay.
I think it was a 2019 movie. It was only recently, like, it didn't get a lot of distribution. Apparently, it was a bunch of like film festivals, and then it came out on Blu-ray, I guess, last year. Really,
very cool.
But it's slow. Like, it's the pacing of it is slow. The cinematography is beautiful, and it says a lot. Like, it's funny how much it really says. When I started watching a second time, getting to get through the second time yet, but it's really interesting how having a better understanding of what happens doesn't actually hurt it. Like, so you know how, like you were saying about how like it's a plot thing, right? Like those kind of movies, you watch a second time, once you already know what's going on, it's not nearly as good. This one is just really, it's a thoughtful film.
Okay. That's very cool. Yeah, because I feel like the worst types of movies are the ones where when you watch it a second time, there's no tension, but also some stuff makes less sense because like the ending doesn't gel with like the what came previously, and it's only really meant to make sense when you only kind of like 3/4 remember it and you're missing like the details and you've just got the shape of the plot. And then the best kinds of movies are the ones where when you watch them again, it feels like they're better.
Yeah.
So you saying that you started watching it a second time, is that like right after the first watch?
Close enough to it. I was just watching it with Mom, and I don't think it's her kind of movie, and I'm not exactly sure why. I think because it's funny is that because it's this interesting mashup, I think it's, you know how in different genres there's different flavors of the thing, and when you're not used to the genre and you think of a specific type of movie, you really only have the idea of that one thing, and if it's a little bit different, if something's not what you expect, even if it's good, it can be a little bit disconcerting or disappointing. Yeah.
Oh, it's like there's that tweet where somebody was like, guy who has only watched The Boss Baby watching like a second movie, and it's like, oh man, I don't know about you guys, but this is really giving me Boss Baby vibes.
Yeah, I think something like that.
Your pre-existing expectations can really sort of like shape how you like feel about it.
Right. Because what was interesting, I saw something about, I think it was Joe Walton who was commenting about different genres of fiction, and how that if you're reading something that's marketed as one type of fiction and it doesn't follow the conventions that it's supposed to, but doesn't do it in any kind of meaningful way. Like, it's one thing to not follow the rules, and it's another thing to not follow the rules intentionally because you're going for an effect. And if somebody, a writer's, for example, or even the reader is inexperienced with that genre, then sometimes what can happen is that you almost reinvent the wheel a little bit, but not in a good way. And you sort of stumble in certain ways that that long history of that particular genre is already ironed out a bit.
Yeah. There's like the two different ways, which is that you can come in with a fresh perspective and then innovate, right?
Right.
And then there's the, you can come in and you can do the really clunky version of something that other people have done and refined for like decades, and then think that you're doing, you know, the same thing that other people are doing, or maybe even think that you're innovating, and then just, you know, you've ended up making like the same thing but bad.
Yes. It's like a tweet where I remember, again, we keep on referencing other stuff, but somebody was commenting about how wow, this movie is the first movie ever with like a strong female protagonist. And it was just that, you know what I mean? Like, it was just it's not, it doesn't make it bad. It just makes it a little bit awkward, unrefined, unpolished.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah.
It's like the opposite of the Seinfeld effect, right?
What's
Are you familiar with the Seinfeld effect? Is how really groundbreaking shows age poorly because everybody else does them.
Right.
So you go, you know, you watch Seinfeld and you go, this is the same joke as all the shows that I watch, except worse. And it's like, well, no, this is the reason why all those shows. Joke. Yeah, this is the first people to do that. And everybody for 20 years, like, it's fundamentally like altered like the landscape of what like sitcoms look like. And so what you're seeing is like the seed of every sitcom that you watch now. And the reason why it's like it feels overdone is because these guys were the first to do it, and obviously, you know, the next guy to do it just didn't do it exactly the same way. They tried to make it better. And so this, what you're reaching back, you know, 20 years in time and seeing like the earliest version of something,
the joke.
Yeah, so when something doesn't end up being that popular, it doesn't end up sort of shifting the cultural consciousness that much, it doesn't end up sort of embedded into a framework for making stuff, then it can age a little bit more gracefully because nobody else is trying to do it. But then ironically, that stuff also tends to not be as good. So you kind of have to find the weird stuff that slipped through the cracks that also happen to be really good.
So that's us. Nobody's doing what we're doing because we're not worth imitating.
I don't know if that's true because I don't know if we're doing anything in particular. I think actually a lot of people are doing what we're doing. I think if you think about the phenomenon of two dudes or a handful of dudes just sort of sitting in front of mics and talking at them.
Talking about one particular game that's been around for 9 years now.
But we're not talking about one particular game. We're talking about The Long Walk right now. So I don't think you get to say that. The number of dudes just sharing their opinions on media to basically nobody, I think that's actually a very popular genre. I just think that there's very few examples of people who enough people care about for there to be things to steal.
That's true. So let's bring it back. Let's do this. Let's injustice this.
Okay, so our first comment comes from Sonic Nicholas 1995, and they say, is there any character you want to like but just can't? For me, I want to like Suicide Squad, Joker, Unhinged, but I really can't rank him that high.
So there's two parts to this question, I feel like. So who do I really like that I want to like more? I don't know that there's anybody that's that disappointing, except for maybe Elseworld Flash, because he used to be so good. Red Lantern Hal Jordan. Like, it's not that it's nothing inherent in them. It's that when they've been nerfed, and I think, man, it was he used to be so good. It's not that it's a missed opportunity. It's that they were so good before and they got worse.
For me, I don't think I really, really want to like them, but it's slow characters like Solomon Grundy. I feel like, it's less that I want to like them and more that I think it's almost just like a waste of the roster, because no matter how good or interesting the abilities are, and I even think about like, Doomsday, right? When we didn't have many characters, Gold Doomsday being able to heal when he knocked somebody out was like pretty useful as like an ability. But then the second that you have people who can actually like sort of play a little faster responsively, maybe people who have like range specials, you just never really want to play with them. And so I think it's like a waste of resources and effort on everybody's part. I think it's a waste for the developers to design a character and stat block them out and animate a special and have all of that stuff for them to just be slow and therefore not fun to play with. And it's a waste of like our time, just literally, because even if you're good at them and play with them and they're a character that you have and use, those fights just last longer. It's just like it would be different if it was more fun, right? But they're less fun and it's slower, so there's really no reason to play them unless you're trying to do something really sort of specific with them in terms of like building a team around them or showcasing them, or I don't know, trying them out and learning about them. So it really just feels like kind of like a waste of everyone's time. And so I wish that I wish there was fast characters and faster characters, because you really feel that they were meant to be sort of slow. And I think a lot of games are fine with slow characters and deliberate stuff, and I think the way that Injustice Mobile is, it just isn't.
I think that might even be a problem with the whole idea of stat creep, or what's that called? What did you call it? Power creep?
Power creep, yeah.
Because, while they were still doing updates, they wanted to introduce new characters, and I think they could have actually gotten away with just introducing new characters. But then, on top of that, they had the power creep where the stats kept on getting higher, the passives kept on getting better, the passives end up having more abilities. Each ability would have been as good as a previous passive on a gold character. Mm-hmm. And then it's more the exception rather than the rule that characters end up becoming obsolete and not as good. Doomsday Prime is still pretty good. What hurt him the most probably was that he started introducing characters that could nullify healing.
That's true.
With higher stats, Doomsday doesn't really have anything to distinguish himself. He's got a swipe combo that only does 2 hits.
Yeah.
He's got a tap combo there's nothing special about it, and a passive that's almost obsolete.
It's true. I think the only thing that they ever introduced into the game that there was never any real sort of response for, like, I'm not counting damage increases, even like big ones like the 300% on stun, just because, at the end of the day, that's just like damage. But it really was that Tantu Totem, like if you take 0 damage, like wipe it. And I think it's with almost everything else, there was sort of, it seemed like there was a specific goal of the developer to make responses for it and shift sort of what was viable and good and give you sort of answers to most problems or like questions sort of fights would pose to you, which is how am I going to deal with this? Right. I still think it would have been really cool and interesting, and it's too bad that the game was winding down, if there was like people that did, instead of having like no damage on specials, if there was more stuff that did like really heavy damage reduction so that it would still wipe out the power. I think, a lot of those like block the damage from this would be so much better in the current meta if it was just like block like 90% of the damage.
Yeah.
Or, like take like a little bit if and I think there could have been some interesting stuff there that would have finally rebalanced the meta. Unfortunately, we never quite got to that finish line. But yeah, so those are really the characters that I would want to like but can't. It just in general, I think that's a good point too, is that I would want to have the opportunity to give the roster more love. I think it makes sense while you're accumulating and collecting that you want to have the next guy be even cooler than all the guys that came before him. And so you keep wanting to get that next bigger one that's going to have an even cooler ability and whatever, and it motivates you to keep playing and collecting and earning.
It's like chasing the high.
Yeah. But then once you're where we are, what you really want is to be able to sort of freely select from a roster of cool, interesting, differentiated characters and play with the favorites to your play style, right? And I think the stat creep works in favor of one thing and against the other. And I think that the real issue is that, like, I think when they were releasing content, there was this sort of constant treadmill of content, and there's only so many ways to motivate people to keep playing and earn the new stuff and make the new stuff even cooler. And it's really, really hard to have, balanced characters that are all interesting and very different from each other, but not necessarily better than each other. Right. And there's some ways to do that, but I think they took the easier way, which is to just make the next one strictly better, which I don't really blame them for. But it, unfortunately, you're right. It does make the earlier characters like a lot less valuable, I guess, as it goes on.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's why it's been a really cool exercise since November. I was looking back, November 17th of 2022 is when we started doing the challenge characters and doing a multiplayer team with each challenge character each week that it came out, whether it was in our Q&A or in the recap. Mm-hmm. And missing 3 weeks, we've got about total another 11 weeks to get through all the characters. It would be really kind of neat to do all those and then maybe start working on the challenge characters that are not available as sort of a tease, maybe not a tease, that's not the right word, of what potential has been lost for the players that don't get them.
It's more like a brag. It's like a flex, because when somebody shows you something in their collection, they're like, you can't have this. It's out of print now.
But what's amazing though is that making myself do this even in weeks where I don't want to use the character, like Arkham Knight was a good example. I did not realize how good he could be with the right gear loadout, and using the Enchantress Companion gears, it's been a revelation. Like, that gear has opened up so many of the characters that I really did not want to use as a main damage dealer. That being said, the second part of Sonic Nicholas's question/comment is they want to like Suicide Squad Joker Unhinged. I don't know why. Suicide Squad Joker Unhinged is probably objectively the absolute worst character. Like the worst gold challenge character out of any of them. I can't imagine anybody worse, because of his passive, it is worse against more powerful characters. And because of his passive, it is worse against weaker characters.
Mm-hmm. It brings you down to the level of whoever you're fighting.
And then a little bit lower.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it is like a unique, and it could be an interesting ability, I think, if it was implemented better. I think if you like matched like stats, gears, everything, right?
Yeah,
I think
gears. If you had gears, that would be enough. If you could keep your gear effects or their gear effects, or take their passive, that would be cool.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways that it could be cool. And so I think that, when you want to like somebody, is you see the potential in them, right? So I think I see the potential in how it could have been so different, and he could have been a lot better, but then, you're stuck with who you have.
There's two ways that I think that they really missed out on. They had the potential, I don't know whether they never got around to it or it was not even on the radar, but if you could have a character that upon tag in would nullify the other character's passive for 10 seconds, or you could have somebody that when you knock somebody out, you get their passive in addition to your own, and you could accumulate passives. That would be amazing.
It would be.
It would be so much like and it wouldn't be, I don't think it would be unbalancing either, because you still have to knock them out.
So it sounds like you want to like him too.
I want like all the characters that are not good. I think the problem is that Suicide Squad Joker Unhinged is inherently and objectively bad.
Mm-hmm.
When you have to play with the opponent's character and it's weaker than yours and it has less health and it has no ability, no passive, no gears. Mm-hmm. And before you couldn't even accumulate power. I think originally when he was released, they might have done a slight tweak to make it so that you could at least accumulate power. Can you imagine how bad that is in a world where there's Tanty Totem and all you've got is this dead weight? It's a meat shield basically that does hardly any damage and just sits there letting your opponent accumulate power while your fight drags on.
Yeah, miserable, terrible.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it sounds like Sonic Nicholas maybe either has a better grasp of the counterfactuals than us, imagining what could be, or they want to see the good in people more than we do. They haven't written somebody like Suicide Squad Joker fully off. I think that's the other thing that's hard in terms of like wanting to like somebody but can't, is I think the biggest examples are the ones that we already did like, because it's hard to imagine somebody that we don't really like. I think it's very easy in a game like this. You just kind of write people off. You're like, I don't like playing with this person that much. And you don't want to like them more because there's a lot of other people to like. And that's sort of the whole thing that you were talking about. We're forcing yourself to play the challenge characters, let you like some people that you didn't think you wanted to, that you had already sort of given up on.
Right.
Yeah.
This week has been a perfect example of that. Like, so what's neat, Arkham Knight, is that, so his special 2, if it could do it every time instead of only at 200%, but at 200%, the drones come out at the end of the part that Arkham Knight does, where he's actually doing it. The drones come out. This still counts as a special 2, and they can hit the next opponent. The idea of that stuff coming out after the special, if you lean into it a little bit with Enchantress Companion Gear, it's even that much better. The drone strike comes, it knocks them down, and if they're blocking, then you've got another chance with the Enchantress Companion Gear skulls.
Yeah.
And it just does, it really opens him up, and it opens up all those late game characters who had a special 2 that could only knock out the opponent on the last hit.
That's pretty fun.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We have time for another question, right? I mean, we rambled a bit, but yeah.
So the next question is from Alvin Alvarado 1579, and they say, what would be a good beginner team to beat Survivor mode or do good in online? Because right now I'm using Silver Flash and doing the Infinite.
So I think he's doing the Infinite combo, like the basic, where you can just keep on getting it on block. And I want to be clear, there's a bunch of stuff to unpack here. The Infinite combo is really only Infinite or Infinite Jungle if you can do it while they have power. I think if you just do it because you happen to time it right when they're about to open up, I don't think that counts the same way. Right? Because you're going to be offline, you're going to be generating power for them all the time, every time you hit them. And if you're generating power, they're going to hit you with a special. Good beginner team to beat Survivor mode. I don't think there's a good point in beating Survivor mode anyways. Like, it's not a beginner kind of task.
Yeah. So is your answer that's a bad question, come back with a better question? Or do we want to theory craft at least a little bit and see if we can't?
Well, yeah, I'm trying to break it down a little bit because I think there's a better question and a better answer to that better question. The better question is, how do I do well in Survivor mode? What's a good team? What's a good strategy for getting as far as I can in Survivor mode to get the rewards that I need? Because beating it is, I mean, we have a video, we can link it in the description, where when Survivor mode was, I think, 15 or 16 fights, it was definitely beatable, but it would take a long time. It'd take like 45 minutes. Yeah. And now they've added like a handful more fights, and it's that much harder, and it's that much less of a payoff. Yeah. To do it.
So you don't think it's worth trying to do it like once for personal glory? Because we kind of did it once for personal glory. It never really made that much sense to do, but it's easy for us having done it to say, who cares, right? But
yeah. And well, like maybe that's true. I mean, the fact that they've extended Survivor, and I no longer feel motivated to beat even the extended version of it. It feels like it's not. Maybe it's just the stage that we're at for playing the game. I have a limited amount of time playing the game, and I've got more interesting goals each week. Even giving up. So this is one of the struggles, right? With newer players, they've got so many things to do. The only reason that I've been able to do the challenge characters the last 7-8 months is because we maxed out our Valorium alloy. We didn't max it out. We had enough that we don't need it for anything. So I'm not as motivated to play Phantom Zone the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And because I could give up on that, it's again, the game's opening up for me in a way that it never did before.
Yeah.
So the strategy for Survivor, I think, is really having a good bronze team, using maximized gears to give you the advantage in the fights. And once you hit the part where you can't, or you struggle to beat the team, don't swap out your players until they all get knocked out. That fight that gets knocked out, your team matchup is locked in when you switch characters. So by switching to a silver character, all of a sudden you've got a stat advantage over the guys that knocked out your bronze team, and you get one free win. You start that next fight with the silver character. Chances are you're not even going to get close to winning. And then you swap out for a couple of golds. And that way you extend whatever level you're able to reach with your bronze team, which should be, consistently fight 8 or 9. Then, or even better, like if you're doing well, I think you can get higher than that. But I think consistently, as far as getting rewards, that's useful. And then you have a switch out to get 2 more fight wins. I think that's really the best strategy for Survivor.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And one of the things that I want to point out that's kind of not funny exactly, but interesting, is when you say, like, what's a good early team, right? I think the whole thing, beginner team. I think the whole point of, a beginner is that you don't have a lot of stuff and you're spending your money on packs. So you don't really, like, everybody has something different when you're a beginner. Right. I think it's one of those things. It's almost like entropy, right? Where, you start at this sort of like compressed point, which is like right at the start of the game. And then as you're playing, you're unlocking sort of characters from the story mode in like a predetermined order. But up until that point that you buy sort of your first pack, everybody's had exactly the same journey. The only difference is the amount of XP you have. And then as soon as you start buying packs, the possibility space opens way up. I'm doing stuff with my hands because we're on video, but the listening audience can't see this at all. But so as soon as you start buying packs, which packs you buy, how you upgrade people, which characters you get, how many copies of those characters. Everybody should have for a long time in the middle, like a either completely unique or almost completely unique roster in terms of the cards that they have. Like those, what are those even called? The 10% like stat boost cards?
Yeah.
It's been so long I don't even remember.
Yeah, I don't remember either. I mean, I can look it up,
But so people have a different combination of those cards. They'll have a different combination of characters and their augments and
even their specials. They have to promote their specials, right?
That's true. Their specials and how upgraded they are. And that's
where it's even upgrade.
That's even before you take into account their levels, right? And so when somebody's a beginner, we have absolutely no insight into what your roster looks like. And so the best
support
beginner
cards.
team
Support cards.
Yeah. So the best beginner team is the best of whatever you got. And what even is a beginner in this is also really hard to say because, you're still a beginner when you have gold cards. You're still a beginner when you have a gold team, right? There's so much stuff in the game that you could say, oh, now I have like one fully maxed out gold team. I'm no longer beginner. I'm like intermediate. But like those lines are so like blurred, right?
Right.
So it becomes an almost impossible question to answer without you saying it, because there's no such thing as one beginner. It's for me, I have exactly these cards with this configuration. Right. What would be the best team for me to beat Survivor?
So I'll even point out that I agree in large part with almost everything you've said. The one point I will make is unless you're sort of lumping all the bronze cards together, it's because you feel like the passive has so little separation, the gameplay has so little separation. I think there's still at least some variety even at the beginner level where everybody gets 3 different bronze cards.
Oh, that's true. Do people not get the same bronze cards?
They do not. And so
okay.
Yeah, and so that's why I think the challenge, and I say this every week when I comment, or we say this every week when we comment on the recap about what the requirements are to beat the challenge and unlock a gold card, is that the reason why that's so important is that it's that step. It opens up possibilities in a big way that the regular progression does not.
That's true, where you can, for just like a little bit of your time and having enough of the sort of raw material in terms of the requisite characters to beat it, you can get a gold instead of having to really grind and like earn it in the traditional credits way.
Am I remembering wrong? I feel like way back when you started playing, it was soon after there was like some sort of anniversary bonus credit thing. And you got enough.
I got it like 3 times for some reason.
Yes, and it was enough to get a gold pack. And that's why we are still partial to Black Adam. Regime. Who's this gold one? Is it Regime Black Adam that's gold? I think it's
Regime Black Adam. Yeah, but that was the first gold card we ever got.
So his
and
stats
we
were
got
low.
it way early, so it was like before I bought my first bronze pack or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So his stats are low. His passive, it takes a lot of work to make something useful out of it. But he was fast. And he was head and shoulders above any silver or bronze character that we had.
And then you connected somebody else's WBID from online, which maybe if they still kept track of stuff and cared at all, maybe that's a violation of terms of service, and I'd be more worried about
the unlocks. You're talking about the unlocks.
Talking about it for the console unlocks, so that we both started the game earlier than we would have otherwise with gold characters. And I think that in a lot of ways that actually was a much more fun and interesting way of playing the game. I think having like one good guy for a while probably gave the game a lot more sticking power. It's kind of giving you like a taste of what better stuff could be, and it makes the early grinding just like pretty smooth, so it lets you just play for a little while.
It's like a drug
and
deal.
not need to make a strategic decision for quite as long.
Yeah. You got to give them a taste, man. It's like every drug dealer. First one's free. Get them hooked.
Which is, and it's a delicate balancing act, right, for the amount of stuff to give. Because I think a lot of people who, we've seen people who just have like hacked accounts and they don't really sort of understand a lot of the economy or decision making, and I think that can sort of kill your enjoyment of the game. But I think also for a lot of people, getting stuff really slow can kill your enjoyment of the game, and not having sort of you have this big ladder in front of you, but you don't. It's really sort of divorced from what the actual value of things were. Like you see these packs, you see this stuff, and you go, "I'm going to buy that stuff one day," and you don't really know what that even means necessarily. So it's a bit of a balancing act. But I think the way that we both played is we both got some golds infused relatively early, and in both of our cases, they weren't good golds, right? But they were good enough, and I think that made the game a lot more exciting, because you could just, in that early days where you're just supposed to be sort of playing normally, we're just blitzing through it, and we go, this is sort of fun, and it's a game that has enough meat on its bones mechanically that it justified us continuing to play it.
It's funny that you mentioned the hackers and how they make a mistake of it is a mistake to have too much and not appreciate it. This is a game that really rewards the grind in more ways than one. And it's the ability to play with different characters and see what they can do that really makes this better than just a collecting game or just a fighting game. Because there are so many differences, and there are so many combinations, and there are so many nuances with each skin, even, never mind different characters, right? They all play a little differently, and you don't get an appreciation of it until you've actually put in the time. And when you've got everything, it's actually a really neat balance, where the collecting encourages you to play, to grind, and the grind makes you appreciate what you get more, and they sort of enhance each other. And if you jump past that, you lose out on so much of what makes the game good.
There's no sense of achievement. There was, I forget what there was like a tweet that went very viral about somebody who hacked, where it goes, you didn't learn anything, you didn't achieve anything, and you've robbed yourself of like the joy and sense of accomplishment for something like cheating in a single player game. And so not to parrot that sentiment, but kind of a little bit. It's both funny because it's a little bit ridiculous for somebody to go online and sort of scold somebody in that way. But it's also there's a nugget of truth to it.
That's the joke, right? It's funny because it's true. I think, and to me, that there's that little bit extra with Injustice where it's not just that you don't get the joy of the achievement. It's even if you don't get the achievement, even if you do nothing, the fact that you had to play so much with these characters and you're forced because of energy recharges to play other characters, you really again, I can't believe how good some of these challenge characters are because I've had to play with them. Mm-hmm. It's wild.
Okay, wait, sorry. I'm just going to read you the context.
Okay.
Somebody turned the in-game speed on the game Sekiro, the FromSoft, the Dark Souls people game, to 50% to beat the final boss.
Right.
And then somebody replied, you cheated not only the game but yourself. You didn't grow. You didn't improve. You took a shortcut and gained nothing. You experienced a hollow victory. Nothing was risked and nothing was gained. It's sad that you don't know the difference. Which is I do like people talking like they're like a medieval like general in some sort of fantasy show about like a video game and somebody using like hacks in a video game. There's that other thing I feel like we're increasingly just mentioning fun tweets we saw.
We are, I guess, because we are.
But it's good content, and I've even just lost the tweet now that I was going to mention.
Yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame that Twitter is getting destroyed.
Yeah, have you noticed that it is like noticeably like worse?
Oh,
like
100%.
Your feed has like noticeably
100%.
decreased in quality. I feel like one of the things that happens that used to happen sometimes but not very often is I keep getting the same tweet over and over again in my For You page. Like I'll refresh it and the same tweets will show up and I'll think that I didn't like refresh it properly. And then also sometimes when you refresh it, especially on mobile, it just jumps me to the middle of my feed and then it's like refresh and added stuff at the top. It feels increasingly like a not particularly usable app. And then Threads also doesn't seem very good.
No.
Doesn't seem like there's a lot of viable alternatives.
Not yet.
Yeah. And I kind of I hate how much it has forced me to read discourse about and get sort of on some level invested in the lives of people who I really don't care about and who I think we as like a society would be benefited from by not talking about or giving like news cycle attention time to. And I'm avoiding, I mean, you clearly know who it is if we're talking about like Twitter and Threads, but like I just don't think we should. I think other than like government sanctions, like we should be spending as little time like paying attention to and giving space to like news stories about these people as possible.
Agreed.
Yeah, anyways.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Oh, I think
but then I get mad. I'm angry. And so then I read about it. I'm like, this guy sucks. I hate this guy. And then I'm like, mostly not to other people, but then right now I'm clearly doing it. I'm like, hey, did you hear how much this guy sucks? Did you hear this thing that he did that sucks? I'm like, why am I angry? Why do I care? Like, why am I giving these people like attention?
Because it's Suicide Squad Joker Unhinged Redux.
Oxygen. I'm like, and he named his kid something weird, and it's like I don't understand. I don't understand why other people are talking about it, but in the same breath I'm talking about it, and I've lost some sort of fundamental insight. My brain has been poisoned. The internet has rewired like my neurochemistry to just like want to like point and react to things that I honestly shouldn't and don't care about.
But it is exactly Suicide Squad Joker Unhinged. It is that we can see how good it could have been, whether it never was that good or it used to be that good, and it's not maintaining its potential or reaching its potential.
Yeah.
Something getting demonstrably worse. Everything is injustice. Everything comes back to injustice.
Everything is injustice. This also definitely isn't an apt comparison, but when we're talking about an imagined better past, it's also reminded me of like nationalism a little bit.
Oh.
It's like, don't you remember the good old days? Shouldn't we make Twitter great again?
Oh, yeah.
Anyways, I think you brought it around very succinctly before I made a reference to nationalism for no reason. But I think that's a good place to end it.
It was a good place to end until the nationalism stuck its ugly head up.
You always want to end it just a little bit before the nationalism. But so this is a bit of a longer episode, but this is also a rarer episode now, apparently. So I guess I don't feel too bad about giving a little more content this week. So to finish up, we would like to give a huge thank you to our lovely supporters on Patreon.
That would be Alexis M supporting us on the Your Message Here tier, Michael Devries, Irvin Ruiz, Hoshi 127, who are supporting us on the credited level, and the list on the screen of a few other people who have been generous enough to have supported us at some point during this pandemic.
There you go. Thank you so much for your support, and thanks so much to all of you for watching. We'll see you next time.
Komoda.